So be aware that by participating, your voice will be on YouTube. So anybody in witness protection might want to keep their camera off and their phone silent. Real quick, just to give you, there's some new people here who haven't been to an SDTIG meeting before, so I'm just going to give you a quick outline of what we do. We are a technical book club, and we cover the same book for several months. I think our shortest track has been maybe 2 months, and our longest track was like 8 or 9 months, but we learned our lesson from that. We're never doing that again. So we really like our tracks to be about 4 months. And while you're here, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and then just talk a little bit about the track as we had it outlined. So what you'll find if you were looking at this is we're going to go through, we started out as a book club, but then we started really long time ago when people used to read. And now nobody reads anymore. So we've evolved to be, okay, yeah, Scott, you read, but the rest of us don't read. So we've evolved to being kind of like a training co-op course. So what we're doing is this DataCamp track that's here that has now given me an internal server error, which I guess is the risk for doing online stuff. So this track is 22 courses and 84 hours. And if we did this track, the entire thing, we would be in another 8-month Python for data science track, which we don't want to be in. So what Scott and I did is we sat and we said, okay, if what classes did we want to talk about in meetings? And we said, okay, we would like to talk about these, really 8 classes and 4 projects. So these 12 items, right? Now, Scott and I are going to do all 22 courses, right, Scott?
I guess.
Okay, maybe not.
Well, no, it's just I want to talk about sort of like first impressions and whatnot. But I'll let you finish your intro spiel first.
Okay. So I thought we were going to do all 22 classes, but maybe Scott didn't like one of the classes we did, so maybe not. But anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to meet, and we're definitely going to talk about these 3 things. Like on May 26th, we'll talk about those 3 things, but we might not just stick to that. So if you look at the track and you see how it's data manipulation with pandas. So when you go here and you see that we did the first 2, right? And then this is data manipulation with pandas and merging data frames with pandas. And then between that and the next, statistical thinking in Python, which I think is pretty far down here. Where is it?
Yeah, I remember when we were discussing this, we were like 1, 2, 5.
Yeah. So we recognize that this ratchets up the complexity pretty severely here. So I imagine that Scott and I will probably, make it to somewhere around this number 15 or so before statistical thinking. So if you guys keep kind of plugging along in the material and you want to bring up material that isn't in this outline, but if it's in kind of like the flow of the class, I guess what I'm saying is in the next meeting, we're definitely not going to be talking about supervised learning, right? In the next meeting, we're definitely not going to be talking about cluster analysis, right? So if you keep to the flow and you want to stay in the lane and talk about something that's not in the agenda, we are open to that. That's what we're going to do, okay? All right,
Yeah.
that's one thing about the track. Here's the next thing. This SDTIG was envisioned as a beginner class, and we like to keep that beginner vibe. And the problem is we're going to start talking about statistics and deep learning and things like that. And so these are harder topics, but we still want to be welcoming to beginners. So if you do the material and you have a really stupid question, please come with that. Like we want to hear the stupid question. Like Scott and I had a goal here, and that goal was that 1, we would cover material that we were interested in, and 2, that we had a very welcoming environment for beginners. So there you go. We're going to try to keep the conversation down at the 200 to 300 level. I think not so much the graduate degree level. And then another thing about TIG is we cover the material as homework, right? So when we start on May 26th, we will have done this already. So we're not going to approach this as if we're introducing these topics. We're going to approach this as if that material was completed and we're talking about it. Okay. I think that's everything, isn't it, Scott?
Yep, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, I think so. And I think we should start off with maybe like first impressions. So had you used DataCamp before?
Okay, this is a great topic. So is my resolution too high? Can you guys see okay?
Type something. You could probably crank up the font there a little bit.
What I think I'll do is I'll do this in an Evernote so that we can keep it in between sessions. So I'll title this, but I'll crank the font up to like an 18 and we'll just say, okay, so what I'll do is okay. First impressions of DataCamp. All right, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I hadn't, I think I had done one DataCamp when we were doing R back, or maybe it was Spark. I don't remember. It was one of the two of those. It may have been like a later R or an earlier Spark thing. And I remembered it being a little less remedial. It could be that the topic that I had chosen at that point was maybe more advanced than, an intro to Python. I mean, that's pretty basic, right? So, and I think the goal there is to cover, is to get everyone, even people that don't have programming experience, up and running in Python. So I get it. They're targeting true beginners here. And so maybe that's why it felt a little, as I said, remedial.
I thought it was super basic and I got bored easy.
Yeah, me too.
Because I'm like, all right, I mean, I could read the code before they explained it and I could do the exercises without reading. I was like, oh, they want this. Oh, they want that. They were like, this is 4 hours of content. And like 90 minutes later, I was like, well, maybe I should go back and watch the videos. So I went back and I watched all the videos and I'm like, yep, they said pretty much what I thought they were going to say,
Yeah. For the first, the intro to Python, I basically did the same thing. I skipped the videos and just did the exercises as fast as I could until I got to NumPy.
Right. Okay, but let's not talk about NumPy. But I agree with you that NumPy, in hindsight, is intuitive. But okay, we'll talk about that a little bit later. So what were my first impressions? I agree that I thought it was a little on the basic side for a professional developer. I already loved Python, so it didn't really teach me any more about loving it. I did like the instructor. We had the same instructor for both classes, and I thought he did a good job of explaining the things he did. And I liked the structure of the class. Like I put myself in a beginner role and I felt like the material was going in a logical order that made sense. Except maybe the random part of it. Why do all beginner programming things talk about random like it's valuable? When's the last time you used random in a real project where you're like, thank God I had random?
Well, actually, I liked that aspect of it. I liked that there was a problem that you were trying to solve, and this is one way to solve that problem, right? I kind of enjoyed it. I use random actually a fair amount, but
I've seen your code. I know why.
But it's not something I agree that you do every day, right? Most of it's for things like, I want to create some test data or something like that, right? Like then I use random a lot.
Okay, so wait, we just said that it was basic, and we also said that and this is where I want to get Lemon and Dustin to chime in. So we decided that the next month we were going to do data manipulation with pandas and we were going to do merging data frames with pandas. Is that too boring? Like, of the things that we could do, should we be doing Matplotlib visualization or Seaborn, or should we do the data science toolbox? Like, we can change the agenda right now. Nobody will care.
I think pandas is very useful, and it is a little bit different to use if you haven't used R or pandas or Spark before. But I also expect people can get through it pretty quickly without getting too lost. I haven't looked at it yet though, so I'm not sure. So I think it's interesting, but maybe not for 4 hours of material. Whereas getting into like the data science toolkit might start to get to things that people have not dug into very deeply yet.
Okay, so I think we're going to make a on-demand decision, and I'll update the meeting. I think what we'll do is what do you think about this? Well, Eric, before I skip, do you have anything you wanted to add, or do you just agree with Dustin?
Yes, I do agree. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right. So I think what we'll do is data manipulation with pandas, and then we'll skip and do Python Data Science Toolbox Part 1.
Okay, but
Because
we'll do the project that's in between there, right?
Well, that is a good question. Do we do the GitHub project?
Yeah, I think so.
I think we do the GitHub project. Yes. So we still do the GitHub with Scala, which is exciting, even though this is a Python class.
Well, no,
I think it's on
like
Scala data.
Yeah,
right. Yeah,
exactly. I think it's GitHub data about Scala, but where it's
since Scala is involved,
Python.
we should totally do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So agenda for second meeting. So we will do the first pandas class. What was that called? Not merging data frames, but
Data manipulation with pandas.
okay. And the second one we'll do is the data science toolbox part 1. And then the GitHub project. Okay, I'll
Just so you know, Ike, the first toolbox class is mostly about creating functions.
Oh, that's good to know. What's
And
the
then
second one like, Ted?
The second one is iterators, generators, that type of stuff. So that gets pretty, well, they do walk through it slowly like the DataCamp way they do, but it gets into some more advanced concepts.
Well, I see both as valuable. What would you guys rather cover?
So neither are super data scientist focused. Though creating functions and error handling is very valuable if you're going to do any sort of Python. The generators and iterators I feel like they are over prioritized in learning Python. I think by the time you really need to worry about those, you are a little more capable of finding it on your own just by looking at tutorials or whatever.
Well, so we'll stick with the agenda, Ted. What do you think? You don't like it?
I don't really have a strong preference. I did, the first two, and then actually I skipped the two pandas ones that we were gonna do next month and played around with some of the other classes. And for me, it's kind of like your initial impression. It's like I don't know Python that well, so definitely I learned things in the Toolbox 1 and 2 classes that I didn't know or didn't know well. But for me, doing it the DataCamp way, it's sort of like do it. Maybe I could just skip some of these exercises to get to the ones that are like a little more interesting. That's just my personality, though, I think.
Yeah, I wanted to do that too, Ted, but I knew I would be sharing my screen, and I thought if there wasn't a checkbox by these goddamn things, you guys would give me hell.
Yeah.
So I had to do all of them to say that I passed.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's totally fine to skip the videos. I wish there was an assessment like some of the other,
There is.
There is?
Yeah.
Can you skip with assessment?
Yes.
Okay. So maybe that's what we should be doing, is placing out or whatever, so that we don't have to take some of the.
I don't think so, Scott, because if we're going to be open to beginners, then we need to know the material as they saw it.
Yeah.
So you and I and Dustin and, actually all you guys talking, Eric, Ted, all you guys have to do it all. So particularly if we get more and more popular, we got 16 people here, and, just so you guys know, so Dustin works for Crafting Bites and Soliance, and Scott and I own Crafting Bites, and we do a lot of work with Soliance. And then on a Soliance project, we're working with a company who I don't want to name because this will be on YouTube, but Eric and Sean and I don't know who else is on here, work at that company. And then Ted is a longtime colleague of ours who's been to a lot of meetings and super bright. So we're grateful. Everybody talking, I've learned a lot from. So we're grateful to kind of have a good community where we can talk about this stuff and learn from each other. So we've got a good core already that I'm glad we're here talking. Okay, can we go back a topic real quick? Because I had some more first impressions that I didn't really share my first impressions.
Go for it.
The DataCamp IDE is very constraining. Like, it took me a long time to figure out that Control Enter was only executing the line I was on and not the whole like cell like it does in Jupyter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that code should work, what the hell? And then I would hit run code, it would work. And then I'd hit Control Enter and it would run and not work. And I'm like, this thing's stupid, And so finally I was like, Control Enter doesn't run the frame I'm in. What is going on? And then I searched up DataCamp. Does anybody know how to run the whole thing as a shortcut key?
As a shortcut key, run code as a shortcut key.
Yes.
If you're willing to submit, you can do Shift Control Enter.
Yeah, but I don't want to submit because
you don't get dinged if you submit. You only get dinged if you take a hint.
Oh. I wasn't submitting because I was like, well, then DataCamp will think I'm a moron.
It's a very developer thing to submit the code before you run it to see if it even works. So I say
Yeah.
go for it.
Yeah. So it's just submit. Yeah. Just commit to master as much as I can.
I think what you're trying to say, Dustin, is ship it, MF.
Yeah. Yeah.
Someone will tell you if it's not working.
Yeah. So I thought the IDE was a little constraining. I also felt like until I got to the project, I thought that the guardrails I felt like I was playing bowling with the bumpers in. And I was like, just give me a blank screen. Tell me the same things and give me a blank screen. Like, I'll figure it out. I'll type the whole thing, I feel like a blank screen is more intimidating and the guardrails are like paint by numbers,
Yeah, I felt like they could have done, that's exactly what I felt as well. I feel like they could have like led you on a little less, like where they type the function in open paren and they put like dash dash. Okay, what are you supposed to type? What 3 letters are you supposed to type here? Like rather than doing that, they could have maybe said, hash or comment, like do the thing. Okay, well now I have to figure out how to do the thing, right? And anyway, I agree. It was the same experience for me.
So Ted, in DataCamp, what happens if I just keep taking hints and I just have a really shitty score where I like show the answer to everything? Do I not pass and then I have to go back and do the whole thing again until I pass?
Well, I haven't explicitly tried it, but as far as I can tell, you get 100 XP for getting it right without hints. And so as you take hints, you get less than 100 when you eventually get it right. But XP don't mean anything.
It doesn't affect whether you pass or fail the test.
It not only doesn't affect whether you pass or not, it doesn't, like they show in your profile that you have 500,000 XP and they're not convertible to anything and they don't measure anything and they don't affect your status. You don't get levels. They're just like a trick to get you to do the next screen, you know?
I
Like,
want
you get
I want
100 points for it.
XP. I want XP so that I have an avatar here where I can like buy a cape.
But that's what I'm saying. Usually there's at least some non-real world value. And as far as I can tell, you cannot convert DataCamp XP into anything, even in the DataCamp world.
Are you going to put that you pass these classes on your LinkedIn?
No, because they're too beginner, but like, you know, but I did feel like I need the check mark. Yeah.
Yeah.
So actually, if you go and just go to the far left menu and the bottom item is assessments.
Yes.
Okay. So
Are
like
you going to
Python
embarrass me right here,
programming.
Ted, and show my grades to everybody? It's going to
No,
say
no, no. I'm
D
just saying,
sharp
like that
fail
Python
or something.
programming one. If you did that one, then as soon as you complete that one, if you get a certain score, when you go back to that previous screen where it says intermediate Python, it'll say you got a blah blah score on the assessment. Do you want to skip this class and mark it as completed?
Oh, that's awesome.
And you don't
It
have
would
to.
be awesome, except for Ike has already forbidden us from doing that.
Yes, I have. That's true.
Well, so I did both. I played around, and so it gave me the option to skip it, but then I didn't. I went through still because I didn't know, and I'm not a Python expert, so it could be that even though like I understand functions, there might be one or two little bits about how Python does functions that I just don't know, and if I blitz through, I'd miss it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But well, you were doing your first impression, so I don't
I
want
was.
to
That's
derail.
okay. I was. That was fun. So, I would say the bumpers are too high. I wish that they were adjustable, where you can
Yeah,
say,
absolutely.
"Hey, don't hint me," just make me suffer,
Yeah. I also felt like they, not repeated, but you know how, actually, I don't know if you had to take this or not, but when I was teaching for Developmentor, we had to do our test teach with Ron Sumida or whoever your.
Yeah, I did it with like 5 guys, Kennedy,
Yeah.
Whittington, yeah.
Yeah, anyway, so this was like, I guess, different than the test teach. Sorry, this was like a, where I had to go through a whole module without making a mistake in front of Ron. Anyway, and basically they sent me to train the trainer, right? Because I had some problems using the word etc. So in that train the trainer class, they basically said the best way to get someone to train someone on task-oriented things is for the first step is the trainer to do it and explain it, and the trainee to just sit and watch. The second step is for them to work together. So maybe the trainee is doing it and the trainer is, guiding them.
Yep.
Then the last step is for the trainee to do it and then just the trainer to provide the guardrails. So like the trainee is doing it and explaining it as they're going along.
So I see your point, and I feel like in another DataCamp class that I took, they would slowly remove the guardrails, but I feel like in these, they never slowly remove the guardrails.
Yeah, that's what I felt like too. I thought it was less remedial before. Yeah.
It definitely changed some getting into intermediate, but I agree that there's quite a bit there. I don't mind the imports. I feel like by all means, save me that step, but some of the starting the loops and the prints, it seemed like, well, we just did this. I can always go back and reference it to make sure I learned this rather than having it there every single time. But
yeah, but the problem
is
they never got to the third phase. They never got to you do it on your.
Yes, they never. Even in the project, they didn't do that.
Right, which I was hoping they would.
Right. Okay, so do you want to cover the material, guys, or are we done bashing DataCamp?
Well,
let me say one positive thing real quick, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
So one of the things I've been thinking about lately is how I first learned Python and kind of got more into programming and data engineering. And I was using Udacity, and they had that same kind of interface where there's, hey, do this, here's some hints, here's some of the functions, and then you type it and get that response. And I liked that a lot at the time. I think if I was beginning, I would like this quite a bit more than I have so far. And part of the reason is that once you go to that step of installing Python and using it on your machine, it might be really easy for you, but it might be a big headache trying to get pandas installed, trying to get working with the right environment, working with the right version of Python. That stuff can add up pretty quick and deter you. So I do like that they've got this built-in web IDE and they kind of do it step by step, and they don't quickly kick you out to your own environment. I think that's nice.
I do like that. I can see, particularly for beginner things, why that's important. That's why I loved the Databricks stuff, because it's all in the cloud and built in for you. You don't have to install Spark or do any of that work. Yeah, it's nice to be able to just dive into the code while you're learning. Because if you get addicted to it while it's easy, you will go through the pain to set it up. But if you have to go through the pain to set it up before you're addicted, yeah, I agree, you're gonna give up. Yep.
I think nowadays, I mean, just do the Anaconda distribution and you're done, right? I don't think it's as hard as it used to be.
Oh, tell that to the people on Dustin, Eric, and Sean and I's team. When we ask them to set things up, it's like a full day and they get angry.
Well, I don't want to like counter example you, but yesterday I set up 20 students while I was teaching the material. They were doing it on their own. And by the time I finished the first module, they had everything running correctly.
Well, we're not all Scott, are we?
No, this isn't Scott. These are 20 random people. That's my
Okay. Well, we have a lot more to set up too. I'm kind of exaggerating. It's more than just Python. It's Databricks and an IDE and a testing framework and switching between local and shared. And there's a lot of work, but yeah. Okay.
So can I share a few comments as well?
Yeah, of course.
Thanks. So as someone who's an experienced programmer, but just like, not so, newer to Python. So for me, I definitely felt like I could go a lot faster than DataCamp. But I mean, imagining someone who didn't even know programming, so they don't know what an if is, they don't know what a loop is, then I do think that the introductory course is at the right pace. You couldn't really go faster if somebody has never even done coding, intro to coding in any language.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So that's that's one observation.
That's it. So can I comment on that? So my wife, Margot, who a lot of you have met, she is a public health scientist.
Oh.
And she doesn't really know programming, but she understands statistics and in some surprising cases, she understands data science. She just isn't that great a developer. And so that's what she had to do, is she was like, had to take these beginning classes. And then I'm just kind of skipped a lot of the advanced stuff because she's like, of course, that's how it works. It's how it works in SAS, which she was familiar with SAS, right? So she was like, of course, that's how it works, But then this stuff, she's like, why are you indenting here? What does this colon mean? I don't understand.
The syntax was tripping up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. The other thing, I had an interesting experience. Like, for example, I went ahead and I did the matplotlib class, and I have not used it at all. And so sometimes in the video, they'd be like, if you want to rotate the labels on the x-axis, you use this, right? And I'm like half paying attention and whatever. And so then I get to the exercise and I'm like, oh, I don't remember exactly what it was, and does it have an underscore in it, and is it a function call, or am I just assigning something to it or whatever? And so I actually wished there was that thing Scott was talking about where I could like raise my hand and say like, I don't know, maybe if I click the take hint thing, I didn't want to take the hint, but like I don't want you to show me the code. I just don't remember what was it called, X ticks or was it called X underscore?
So I used
So
to
what you
hint.
need, Ted,
I used to hint in one or two places, and I agree with you, Ted. Because to me, I'm like, the code looks right. It's not working. Like, what did I do wrong? Then you say take hint for minus 30 XP, and it's like everything. I was like, oh shit. All right, but well, it did help. I could very clearly see what I did wrong, but it is like I can't imagine what the full answer is because the hint is pretty clear where you probably made a mistake. But
so I think what you're asking about, Ted, is you want what's called an IDE, where you hit a dot. There's a list of possible methods that comes up. Yeah. Anyway, I think to our point earlier, sometimes running in this web-based editor does have some drawbacks, right?
Yeah. So actually, that's what I resorted to. Is I would go to the console and I would say dir plt
Yeah.
whatever scatter or
help.
whatever, and
Yeah.
like list that. And I'd be like, oh, okay, that's what it was called.
in PyCharm, you would do that in PyCharm?
No.
Well, you can do it right down there.
Bottom of DataCamp.
Oh, you would right here. You would say what?
Dir print.
Well, you don't have matplotlib imported.
Sorry. Dir open print.
Oh, and you would just get a full list.
I mean, that was
right.
Great
or you could
example,
do help print, and you could see the parameters and stuff like that.
Yeah. Sorry, it would have been better if we had a. Oh, you could do.
You can actually just run an import right there, and then.
So you know what? I wasn't really using the shell down here. What I ended up doing is I would comment a bunch of shit out, and I would just do the help print up in here, or I would just print like I was console right lining out. I would just I don't know what they're going for, so I'm just going to print one thing at a time so I can see these values and then glue them all together the way they want them glued together. I was doing that. I didn't really pay attention that there was a shell down here that I could type in. I don't know. Now I feel dumb. All right. Well,
also next to it, you have slides, and if you click on that, you can download the slides. If you're not paying attention to the videos, you can look through that and figure out answers.
I looked at the slides for one area where I couldn't remember the syntax, and the slides were totally worthless on that one area. Like it was like this: use print to generate output from script. Well, I was looking for the same thing Ted was looking for. I was looking for argument help. Like, tell me what this is to do. I was hoping the slides would just give me the argument help, but no, it's like stuff like that. I was like, well, that's thanks for nothing.
I guess I just got lucky with my slides, the ones that I needed.
So on that note, Ted, I feel like one thing that's lacking is links to the documentation page or some other kind of documentation that is, hey, if you want to see more about what options you have with the scatter plot, here's the docs. Because while, if you're very first starting the programming, you may not really want to go there. Or if you're really senior, you may not want to go there. Like if you're in the middle, it's really good to get used to learning by looking at the Python documentation. That's the first thing Google's going to take you to. It's really easy to find. If you can get in the habit of learning and referencing that, then you'll be a really productive developer in the real world.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to share, just a positive thing, is that by accident, I tested some of the bounds of well, how do they know if my code's right or not? And what I discovered is that they do have multiple test cases that they're running your code against as you get further on. And so like when you create the functions in the toolbox, they're trying different parameters, even though like you think like they're asking you to do this one thing. And so like you think that's all, but no, like if you type the wrong code that happens to produce the right output, like let's say it's supposed to be, square the number. If you instead multiply it by 3, knowing that their input is gonna be 3 so that it looks like it's squared, because they actually hidden have multiple test cases and stuff, they will actually determine that. So I don't know if what they're doing, if they're looking at the code itself or what, but I actually felt that they did a really good job, that when they say you passed, you really did pass. You can't fake them. by writing the wrong code that happens to produce the right result.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. By the way, I meant to interject, but the voice you heard 3 voices ago was Shashank. He also works with crafting bytes and Alliance. So one more. We're just a very fraternal, and Deepika. So there goes the fraternity. I think is online too. Cool. So we did Python. We did variables and type. We did some calculations. Stop me if there's anything here you actually want to talk about. I think all of these are standard operators across any programming language. These are the standard data types across any programming language.
Actually, one thing that I would like to interject here. If you're a programmer and you're trying to learn Python and you don't know Python, but you know programming really well, then I think the best Python talk is the one by Stuart Williams. It's called Python Epiphanies. And he basically goes through like the deep, the one from PyCon 2018, right? He goes through, really deep about how Python is working and, spends less time on the syntax and so forth. I think that's probably the best way if you know other languages.
So what I'll do with these notes so that you guys don't have to worry about it is I'll post them in the meetup under the notes for the meetup so that you guys can have these if you care to have these links. Thanks. So I was just, thanks, Scott. I had a spare 3 hours and 17 minutes to go. he gave this at PyCon. This must have been a pre-conference or something.
Yeah, it was. It was a pre-conference workshop. Yeah.
All right. Cool.
So there are a few things about it. I guess most people here already know Python, so we don't necessarily get into it. But for example, Python is not a strongly typed language. And it's doing stuff at runtime. People know what duck typing is. So those are some things.
Wait, I think Scott has something to. You prickled, yes? Scott.
Yeah, sorry. Python is strongly typed. It's just dynamically typed.
Sorry, it's dynamically typed. It's not typed. Statically typed.
There you go.
And so if you're used to, I don't know, C++, Java, statically typed things, then that may be something interesting to get used to.
Yep.
The mayhem.
It's not mayhem because it is strongly typed, right?
And if you are used to statically typed and you really don't like that you're not specifying your types all over, you can use in the later versions. I'm not sure about the one they're doing, but you can use type hints and say what the type should be, which will just kind of help you understand what you're doing if you're not comfortable not specifying the type for the string you're creating, that kind of thing.
That's a good question, Dustin. Is there does anybody know if there's a magic command for version? Can you go to where it says in sub1 down there and type %version? Magic function version not found. % version? Sometimes they're doubly magic. Crap. Okay. One's lines magic.
If only there was a mechanism to figure out.
Sys.version, but I don't know if they'll let you import sys there.
Oh yeah, they probably will.
Like that?
No magic, no %. Yeah.
You may do import sys first. One line import the thing, and then you can try it.
Yep, that's it. Okay, no, you don't even need the as.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Dustin, that is just type hinting. It's not.
Yeah, I know.
It really relies on the IDE to enforce the type because Python obviously doesn't.
Yeah, no, I know, but I found it helped a lot for, well, I think it helped people coming from C# to be a little more comfortable creating a class with methods when they could say, these are the types we're expecting.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so just tell me if you want to stop. This was all pretty easy. The str for, conversion's pretty normal. There's pi, float. Sometimes I just started typing and I didn't put my code where they told me to, so apologize for that. And then we talked about lists. We talked about these square brackets. It's fine. And then, yeah, that lists can have different types in them. And then you can have a list of lists, little multidimensional stuff here. Was this, just stop me if, you want to. It all seems kind of intuitive. The subsetting, though, I don't see in a lot of other languages.
Yeah, that's one of the kind of badass things I think about Python is they really did that well. I mean, I think there's a lot of things in terms of readability that are really nice in Python, like when we get later on to and or, and they also have like in and a bunch of other operators that are awesomely English and intuitive to read. But I think the slicing, like who in their right mind can remember the arguments to subster in JavaScript?
Yeah.
No one. How about
Yeah.
splice? No, never can remember those things. But like, a couple of days with Python and like slicing, right?
Well, it got to be when we were talking about pandas and NumPy at the end, where I was trying to learn all the new syntax, and I just kind of, in my mind, said, when in doubt, put a colon in there. It'll probably work. And I don't know, it was a pretty good rule. I was like, oh, that didn't come up. Oh, I bet I forgot the colon. Yep, put the colon in there. There it is. All right, so yeah, I liked slicing. And I liked, I don't know, it does feel kind of like you're taking a piece of the pie out and they give you the whole piece, right?
So have you guys done enough Python at this point that the fact that the first number is inclusive and the second number is exclusive?
It messes me up every time, and I don't understand why they do that. I can't tell you how many times I was like 5. Oh fuck, 6. All right, there we go. Like,
there is a reason. It's really complicated though. Hold on, let me see if I can pull that up. Keep talking.
It's really fun to be like, why does Python do this, and go find what the guy that wrote it originally, Guido, says about it, because he always has these reasons and they're never like, what an idiot, right? I don't know what it is, and it does throw me off sometimes. There's certain things I always remember it, and then when I'm using NumPy, when I'm using pandas, I kind of forget because in class I don't know what they chose to do there.
Yeah, I mean the one use case where I feel like it has some benefit to you is like, let's say you're dividing up a data set into train, valid, and test. Okay, and so you can say colon 7,000 to be train, and then 7,000 colon 9,000 to be validation, and then 9,000 colon. And you'll notice that the numbers match, okay? Whereas in any other language, you do 0 to 7,000, and then you do 7,001 to 8,999, and then you do, right? But in this case, the numbers actually match. And so you in that one case, I feel it can kind of help debug because like if you're doing a search and replace for 7,000, you don't have to remember to also change the 7,001. Every time you change the 7,000s, you're going to get all the 7,000s. Does that make sense?
It almost makes sense, which is exactly what the reasoning behind it was. It almost makes sense. It's like almost useful. It's almost right.
I still don't, I just looked up why did they do this, and I hear their reasoning, but it still doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So maybe I need
Well,
some
you're
time.
on like Code Academy. I was trying to find
Yeah,
the
that was my mistake.
Yeah.
I was trying to find the one from Guido himself.
I mean, the other perk that I can make up is that when you want to know the length of something, you just subtract the numbers. You don't have to do +1, but that doesn't seem like a good enough reason.
All right, well, I don't know. I feel like this is still an open question in my mind. So I'm going to say, you know, why are upper end
but I can't find
ranges
it.
exclusive? Maybe we'll get a better answer later. All right. So subsetting we already talked about. We love it. And then we talked about grabbing lists and parking them in variables. I think it's extending the list is pretty neat. It's pretty nice. Just add them together. And then removing elements with a del is fine. I don't know. I wish they would have said, don't ever do this, right? Like, hey, you can do this. Don't ever do that. But what do I know? That's one thing in the course they said, hey, you could do this on one line, but they never say, should you do this on one line? Like, what's the benefit of doing this on one line? And I prefer readability to conciseness, but what do I know?
However, they did show a whole bunch of code examples, and only that one time did they ever do anything on one line. So I think
That's
it
true.
kind of comes through, but yeah, they don't give you a lot of tips. They just show you a lot of code and kind of have you write it in a way that's not a bad way to start.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And you know, in their defense, when I go looking for help on Python, a lot of the solutions are in one line. And so I think sharing how that works from the beginning is probably a good thing to get in the habit of, so you know it can be done and you can read all these answers. I think they're on one line because it's a bunch of Scala developers who are like, how would I do this in Python? Da, 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 you know. So then inner workings of lists. I'm not sure there's anything to learn there. We talked a little bit about functions. I think this is mostly using functions, feeding in arguments to functions. There's your help. Then multiple arguments is fine. And then named arguments like this is fine. It is kind of weird not to have the @ symbol there, though, from all the SQL I've written, but whatever. And then methods being bolted on, like upper off the string.
Oh, there's where they finally tell you. I have to go back. It's going back to what Ted was talking about. They finally show you, oh, if you want to see more about this, do help, and then put the data type or the the
Oh yeah,
module
they
you're
do
working
say
with,
that in
and
the
they'll give you
shell.
some
Maybe
info.
I should have read more, right? I'm always impressed with good help. Like somebody took the time to write everything out and format it so it was readable. Like, thank you, whoever that was. We'll never know your name, but thank you.
So now that we get to methods, this is one of the things that I don't know if other people share this, that I've sometimes struggled with Python is if I want to switch it to uppercase, so then I take my string and I say .upper, but if I want to delete something, I can't say something .del. I have to say del open paren the thingy. And I feel like at this point, if I were a beginner, it would be kind of confusing. Why is it sometimes that I just call a function at the front and pass my thingy into it. And why do sometimes I say thingy dot method name, which looks like a function, basically. You know, it's got parens after it. I'm experienced enough programmer that I don't have difficulty with the sort of the get it done. I just cognitively have trouble remembering sometimes. And I try to call a method and then I have look it up, it's like, oh, it's a function, or vice versa. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that happened to me too. Yep. Where I was like, well, len isn't one, but upper is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. So later on, I think you get more and more methods as you get into more complex classes and things. But early on, you're like, I'm using lent and type and print and help. But then there's other place you want me to do dot upper. And it's like, I just wanted to, because if this were SQL, I would do upper paren and my string, right? I mean,
Right.
I just kept getting it wrong.
Yep.
So
Like index and count.
the reason why, I mean, I know, you, but for everybody else, is there are a certain number of built-in functions that are supposed to operate across all types, right? And those are the functions, not the methods. But if you're dealing with a type-specific thing, that's where you have an instance and then you have the dot and something in the parentheses, right? And so, and you can list, there's only about, I think about 76 different built-in functions. And you can like list them out and figure out what they're useful for, you know, which obviously I've had to do multiple times now. So I've kind of got them categorized in my head pretty well. And I no longer confuse that, but I totally, yeah, when I was first learning Python, I felt the same thing.
Yeah, and like I'm sure all of the Python 2 developers in the world were like already annoyed enough when Python 3 came out. And they probably would have killed people if they said, hey, we're just going to get rid of the built-ins. And so now if you want to know the type of something, you just say something dot type, you know? You don't have to have that type built in. You can have string dot type and, you know, whatever dot type and everything dot type. And we're just going to convert everything to methods. I'm sure that all the existing Python programmers in the world would have like gotten their tiki torches out, been like storming the gates. But I'm saying this because I don't know if there are like more beginner programmers who are either on right now or who are going to be, you know, watching the YouTube. But I just want to say, so if you are in that place, I am so there with you. I have total compassion for that. I think that's one of the non-obvious things about Python in the beginning.
Yeah. And I will say, going to the documentation and looking at the set of built-ins and familiarizing yourself with that list. I mean, I know there's 76 of them, so it's not like a small thing, right? But if you can kind of get your head around, okay, these 5 to 10 are for this purpose, and these 5 to 10 are for this purpose, and so on, and kind of break them up, then after you've done that, it makes it much easier going forward. By the way, I finally frickin' found it. It's Dijkstra. No wonder it was weird. If you search for why ranges are inclusive / exclusive, it's Dijkstra. It's way, way predated Python. Here, I'm looking at a paper on the University of Texas. And I mean, there are some reasons. It's super technical, but it basically says, you know, there are no negative numbers. The start minus the stop is the number of values. The upper bound is the lower bound of the adjacent range, like Ted, you were pointing out, right? Like you can keep going. I'm at an index, so I can say that was
resume at that
next
index.
range. Yeah, exactly. And then I plus some number, and then again, I can guarantee that I wasn't getting what I was getting before, right?
That
anyway,
makes sense. All right.
There's some reasons, but again, it's super technical and it's, you know, it is confusing.
So to answer this question, I should say what? Because of Dijkstra?
Yes. Just search for why ranges are inclusive, exclusive by Dijkstra, which is spelled, by the way, D-J-I-K. Yeah, that's right.
But what I've seen so far is Guido being quoted as saying he really liked that end of the first range is the beginning of the second. That's what captured him. He thought it was just really elegant.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so we did list methods, index, and append. That's makes sense to me. Packages. I'm sure we're going to go deeper into packages at some other point, but this is where we learn about importing, like math. And then there's a couple different ways of aliasing, and choosing like which package and module we're going to pick out.
And at least they don't, I mean, here, you were talking earlier that they don't show you the bad practice of, you know, import, so from such and such, import star. They never
Yeah,
use
that's
those words,
true.
right?
That's true. They
By the
don't
way,
do
that Dijkstra paper is from 1982. Python was invented in 1991. Just like to point that out.
So then we learned about NumPy arrays. So we have a list, and then we create an array, and we see the type array.
Yeah, I
Fancy.
was super happy when I got to this point. I was like about ready to kill myself. You know, I was in the whatever phase of denial where you're ready to bash the computer in or whatever, you know. And then I was like, oh, finally, it was like a breath of fresh air. Ah, something I don't know like the back of my hand. Oh goodness, thank you.
When you got to the BMI and you looked at your height, did you want to kill yourself?
So I've always known that BMI is a total bullshit number, so I've never really paid attention to it or cared about it. And by the way, now that I've lost 20 pounds, my number is now pretty good. So.
You're lighter than me. Why don't you just tell the whole world and all of YouTube that you're lighter than me? I'll have you know I'm 184 as of this morning because when you lost the weight while you've been in COVID, I had a come to Jesus moment in the mirror, and I said, there's no way I'm going to be described as the fat one.
That's funny.
So then I stopped eating. Okay, so yeah, this one was pretty neat actually as an exercise. Like I think they did a good job teaching NumPy here, and they talked about how we can do operations over NumPy arrays, which is super awesome. Like I don't know how you could do this in C#, but you definitely can't do this in one line of code that I know about like this.
Right.
And look, hey, tell me everything that where they're less than 21, and then yeah, you just get an array, and then okay, give me that array, and okay, there's the array of like this stuff like this where I can see like data scientists love Python.
I don't know if you guys remember, but this is how stuff works in R also.
Yes, I remember, Ted. Yeah,
You're
but
drawing arrows going the wrong direction, so it throws everything off.
What'd you say?
The arrows in R like go in the wrong direction though. It's
making fun of the assignment.
Yes.
Symbol.
Yes, but yeah, do you still write a lot in R, Ted?
Yeah, I don't do data science all day, but I still do more in R than I do in Python.
How come?
Easier,
inertia, I guess.
Well, say that again, Ted.
Just inertia, I guess, because I'm more comfortable, and so if there's like a really good time series package that is only available in R, then you kind of have to do it in R. And if there's like a really good NLP package that's only in Python, then you have to do it in Python. So I was just taking a look at, there's this reticulate package that essentially lets you just type a command in the middle of your R developer environment, and now you're typing Python. And so to access all of your variables, you just say r dot and then whatever. And you can seamlessly go back and forth. And so like I could use ggplot instead of matplotlib. I could, you know, whatever.
Please don't tell any of your data scientist buddies that this is possible. Oh my God. We're gonna, please productionize this. Holy shit, what was that? What did you do? Like,
Yeah, but so it's, yeah, so I mean, I do feel that eventually, you know, we're going to be doing everything in Python. It seems like the likely probability, but I don't know how soon that's going to happen. So
we talked about this before when we were covering R. We said, you know, like what's the difference between R and Python? And I feel like we covered it pretty well at that time, that R, you know, everything's a global and everything's super easy to type, right? And in Python, you have, you know, packages and modules, which give you like a name spacing, and you have classes, which give you, you know, so it's like something dot something dot something. So it's like more structured, and to Ike's point, maybe more production oriented, you know, rather than just everything's a global and trounce away.
right. Well,
So
but
it makes
using
it much
both,
easier to program in R, right?
Yeah.
Everything's global and trounce away. Who cares?
yeah. But I mean, using both, I would say nobody, well, there are people who have like the R Python wars and whatnot, but for me, using R is really about the packages that are available for. So I still like ggplot for charts way more than I like, you know, matplotlib or seaborn, you know, and so that is one of the main things is I really like the data manipulation commands in the tidyverse, and I really like ggplot. So for simple basic data manipulation and stuff, I find the code very readable, very easy to do. So for me, it's a comfort zone, you know. But you know, if I'm gonna do some NLP stuff, like there's no spacey for R, so I'm gonna use, you know, spacey. I'm gonna do it in Python.
Ike, can I show you how nerdy I am? Can I share my screen for a bit?
do you think this is surprising to me?
No, I know, but it's funny because I was like, oh, I think I did something. Oh, I'm host disabled, participant screen sharing. So,
Well, what I can do is make you the host.
okay.
Then you're no longer a host too, just so you know.
All right, well, I'll
Unless you're
switch back.
yours
I'll
is
make
better
you
than
back.
my
Yeah.
level.
You can have co-hosts though, can't you?
All right. Share screen.
I don't know.
All
I
right.
would love to learn. We did not pull it off the other day though.
Oh. So here is my
Ah,
trying to figure out what are the differences between lists and NumPy's arrays, right? And NumPy arrays. I was trying to figure out, oh, is there something that you can do more with one than the other? And I went totally effing nuts on it. I mean, I was like, okay, look at all of the things in lists, look at all the things in NumPy array, search for differences in the Dunder methods. I went, you know, looking for things like the differences in the help, like this is the doc or the various attributes. Anyway, all of that, and really, I came to the conclusion that they're pretty freaking similar, and that you can sum up the differences in like 5 lines of code, right? You can basically just, if you create a list, Jesus, let me get the imports. I don't know where I put them. Where I put my import.
not at the top, apparently.
Yeah, it was the second one, unfortunately. Okay, sorry. So you can say list plus list is that, and NumPy array plus NumPy array is that. Basically, the difference. And that versus, sorry, that versus that.
See, I think you should clean this notebook up and release it as a blog post, because I bet a lot of beginners are, I think it would be helpful. It's good.
I mean, this bottom part maybe, but this top part is like total nerddom. me trying to find if there are actually differences of things that you can do with one versus the other.
Okay, make me host. I'm uncomfortable with you having this much power.
So one other note is that the underlying memory representation for lists and NumPy arrays is radically different.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because lists can hold any object, whereas NumPy arrays can only hold a certain type. Yeah, that's absolutely true. I made you host, Ike.
I know, I'm just teasing you. All right, so we looked at NumPy side effects. And then subsetting is, I think this was pretty easy if you understood subsetting before. And then the double brackets were good to learn. They get bigger in pandas. And then, yeah, for 2D arrays. And then average versus median. Hopefully that wasn't a shock to anybody. And then that was it. So you want to move on to the next class?
Intermediate, yeah, man.
All right, here we go. So I don't want to practice. No, I don't want to practice. Thank you, though.
You'll get some XP there if you practice.
Oh, well, thanks. Thanks for that. Yeah. If I could buy like a crown or, give myself a Arizona Cardinals hat, black, and glasses, and a black shirt, like I would be all about it. I'd buy that. I'd snap that up in a second.
Arizona Cardinals. What are you talking about?
I said St. Louis Cardinals, didn't I? St. Louis Cardinals.
No, but I know you know St. Louis. That's all good.
Yeah, I'd be all over that black hat and black shirt. Okay, so let's replay this course. What? Was I in the right course? Okay, I was. Okay. Oh, so yeah, plotting. This is where, like Ted mentioned, that we did an R thing a couple of years ago, and yeah, learning ggplot made this easy because it was very similar. And then we learned about scatter plots. And then we learned, like, uh-oh, there's some outliers here, but here's the grouping. And this is neat to do inside of a notebook, by the way, if you're trying to tell a data-driven story. They didn't really mention that here, but where people love this stuff is when they're storytelling with data. They're like, first we looked at this, and then we introduced this other element. Look what it did. Oh my goodness.
I did have something written down. It's like coming up. It was the correlation with POP exercise 7. I don't know what that means, but keep going, I guess, maybe.
Okay, well, histogram. So histograms are awesome. Boop, boop, boo. And then little histogram with a gap in there. Yep.
Oh wait, you're already on exercise 11. Can you just change the 11 up there in the URL to 7?
Yes, I can.
I just want to see what that was.
This was a video, that's why I skipped it.
Okay. Crap. Was it maybe the one prior? Can you just back up 6?
Yep. Scatter, pop.
And let's see. Yeah. This was the one. Yeah, look at the plot. So did anyone else feel like, okay, so you plot this, And now, obviously, from this data, you can conclude that there's nothing, that there's no correlation. I'm like, what? How can you conclude that from that diagram, right? There's obviously two outliers here that are skewing the living crap out of the thing. So, even once you get those out, you want to log it or something to kind of normalize it a little bit. But
Then
I just felt like
if you take China, the United States, and India out of the world's population, you have removed like 80% of the world's population, right? So,
well, I'm not talking about taking out
any
the
country
US.
comparison when there's those three like gigantic population countries, and
Yeah.
everyone else like falls way below,
But I mean, at least remove China and India, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway, I think I actually did that. Did I do that? Yeah. Yeah. Here, hold on. I'm gonna paste you some code. Chat, Slack. What do you do?
Oh, you're slacking me stuff.
Well, no, I can do
Opening
chat.
my
You can just-
Slack on a video
No.
YouTube thing.
No. That's fine. I'll do the chat.
Okay.
Whatever it is.
It's like
So
terrifying.
other than the thing that's there, do that.
So you want this here.
Yeah. And run code.
All right.
So now we took out the outliers, and now it's like, okay, clearly there's no correlation here. I don't know that I could say that, right? I don't know. It just felt weird to me that they were totally like, yep, look at that. That's so blatant that there's no correlation here when there were those two outliers over there that were skewing the whole graph, and they didn't bother removing them, right? Felt sloppy.
It's not as obvious correlation as the previous one. If you go back to the
Yes.
previous.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. Anyway.
Thank you for that work, Scott. That was impressive. Okay, then it was. I wasn't teasing you. I was complimenting you. So then we talked about choosing the right plot. And by the way, for those of you who care about choosing the right visualization, this book is called, oh, you can't see it with
Looks
my
like a
stupid,
golf course.
oh, there you go. See that? That's storytelling with data. For those of you who want to know that you're choosing the correct visualization and the right properties of those visualizations, this book, Storytelling with Data, and the accompanying workbook, almost like homework for it, are excellent books. And they're now kind of considered the de facto guides on choosing the right visualization. So if you thought this question was interesting, those two books, everyone that's doing report authoring is reading those two books.
I mean, I do report authoring. This is Deepika, and I am part of their community. They have exercises that come out every other week that I do that teaches you something new every week. It's great. The community is great, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, and Deepika is my go-to on this. So Deepika says,
If you don't want to read the book, that is.
sorry, it's got to be super boring watching me type. Sorry about that. Okay, thanks, Deepika. All right, so then we looked at customization. We looked at changing labels and titles and ticks and everything you'd expect that you could do. I mean, everything I expected that you could do. Changing the size, right? He was trying to make the Hans Rosling chart that's kind of famous. So I don't know if you bothered to Google when he talked about Hans Rosling, but if you Google that, you'll see this famous talk. And I loved that talk when he gave it. I watched it when he gave it. and then he died a couple of years ago. It was really sad. I thought he was a great
And
guy.
I will say that this was probably the best like project in DataCamp in these first two talks. I felt like, you know, as much as I liked the BMI or the whatever else, I thought this was super cool, how we got a look at, or we knew maybe what that was supposed to look like, and we were taking data that was there and turning it into that picture. I thought that was neat.
It was neat. I agree with you. I enjoyed that. Yep. Okay, and then motivating.
And then we went back to dictionaries where we wanted to shoot our.
I
So
knew
it's
you were
like,
gonna say
okay,
that.
all this fun, interesting stuff. And now here's how we add two numbers, children. And it's like, oh God.
Well, okay, but Scott, in all fairness, I liked how they made the case for dictionaries, where they were like, well, it's important that you understand arrays and lists and things, but this isn't super great. Like that was part of the, if you were brand new, like Ted tells us, and Dustin's been talking about empathizing with the student, you know, this is a good progression before you get to data frames, right?
I don't know. I felt like they should have been two different topics. Like you cover, I would have done it lists, dictionaries, NumPy arrays, pandas.
Fair enough. Fair
Like,
enough.
yeah, because I felt like they were.
Can I ask a really stupid question?
There are no stupid questions, Ike.
There is for me. So, when do you prefer like a single tick around strings and a double tick?
I will tell you what I tell.
But because
all
here's
of our
what was
employees.
irritating: the class switches.
Yeah.
Like they go single tick and then they switch double tick and they never say why they switched.
Yeah.
And I was like, why'd you switch? You were doing it one way, now you're switching it the other way, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway.
So I say pick one and stick with it. Right?
Well, I thought maybe they switched because of some deep thing I didn't catch. Like
Nope.
they were just
Not-
lazy.
Yeah, not really though. We did have a nice little discussion amongst the dev team recently about single ticks versus double ticks, and I said I just switch them when I want to. I don't really pay much attention, but there are some differences. I wouldn't worry about that at this phase in the learning process of Python, though. It is weird that they changed them though, instead of just sticking with it until they had a reason to.
Yeah, I pick one or the other, and then I use single ticks when I have to put double quotes in, and I put single ticks when I have, I'm sorry, opposite. I use double quotes when I have to put apostrophes in or something like that, right?
Seems kind of weird. Why don't we just like have an escape character and call it a day? But whatever.
I mean, I think it's nice and easy to read, right? Python's supposed to be all about the readability, and the fact that you can put these double quotes and single quotes inside of strings and not have to escape it, and it still is easy to read and understand. I think that's a plus.
Fair enough.
Well, so I mean, having the flexibility in language is one thing. To answer your question, Ike, I'm maybe a little bit, you know, more anal or whatever. So I, of course, have to use single quotes in my SQL code. I still write more SQL than I write Python, and so I religiously use double quotes in Python so that they're different separators than I use in my SQL. And when I paste my SQL queries, I don't ever have to worry about fixing my single and double quotes and escaping and whatever.
Yeah, that's a very good point, actually. Like to distinguish some other language that you know, that's a good one. Or to keep it the same as some other language you know, that's also another good reason. And that's why I was saying basically just pick one and stick with it. By the way, if you go back one slide, sorry. Yeah, well, here it's a dictionary. But you know where they have lists of strings, right? And you have to type, you know, tick, word, tick, comma, space, tick, word, tick, comma, space, tick, word, et cetera, et cetera. And it gets kind of lengthy. what I've seen a lot of code where it just needs like reference data or whatever, it puts the whole thing in a string, right? So you would just have, you know, countries equal quote, Spain space France space Germany space Norway space Italy space Poland space Australia, quote, dot split boom boom. Right? And that way, that's a much easier to type where your fingers
And
aren't
easier
moving
to
all over.
change in the future.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. All right, there you go. Okay, so dictionaryception. So then we moved into pandas and we started about a data frame. And
Why are dictionaries and pandas together in one talk? Did anybody figure that out? Like, what do they have to do with one another?
Well, I mean, they're introducing basic data types you're going to run into in data science, right?
Yeah, but they introduced lists like 7 talks ago.
I thought the reason was that they wanted to get to pandas, but you had to understand dictionaries, or at least it's best to understand dictionaries when you make that jump. So if you want to know how NumPy arrays work, you need to understand list, or it's best to understand list. If you want to know how pandas work, it's best to understand dictionaries coming into it.
Yeah, okay.
I think it was because of that. I think it was kind of forced on them in order to get to arrays and get to data frames, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I buy that. You definitely need dictionaries as a precursor. I just didn't like the fact that they clumped them together.
one thing I'll say about the row labels is I wish SQL had something like this, where you can label elements and then that label carries through when you're slicing it later, and you can it's almost like you can always track where that thing came from as you manipulate it farther and farther away. I think that's pretty cool. I like that.
But the fact that row labels and indexes are separate, that one kind of threw me for a loop.
Yeah. Yep. That was weird too. And then bringing in CSVs, which is great, which I think was very helpful because I think that's what everybody's going to have to do almost immediately when they start working with pandas. So it's good that they showed it.
That was my favorite part of this course was, oh, here's how you do a CSV. And you go, oh, that's why you would use pandas. It's so easy to read this data and that I'm always needing to read in.
Yes. Yes. I wish you could download the CSV. So you had this like tactile, this file's real. You can really do this, you know?
But who doesn't have a CSV laying around? Come on.
That's a good point. So then the square brackets coming out with the difference between a series and a data frame kind of made me mad. Like when I was first learning Python a while ago, I was like, who cares about series? Like make the series the double. Like I always want a data frame. Why am I, why make the code harder when this is what I want all the time, but whatever. And then slicing and lock and iLock to go get Japan, and to get it lock to get it by the label. And I love the label. I'm not sure I would use iLock all that much unless I was looping over something, but for readability, I really like the label. And I like how you can just throw a list of values in here and get all the records coming back. It's pretty slick, boop, get the whole row and the original columns. Have you guys ever driven on the left? Besides Shashank, has anybody else still driven on the left?
I was in New Zealand. I never drove.
Shashank,
was it hard for you to adjust to right side driving?
Had a few hairy incidents in the beginning, but it got better.
It got better.
Well, so I've driven on the left 5 times in 5 different countries. And the scary thing is the first time you drive on the left, you don't really adjust to it. But then as you do it more and more, you adjust really quick. But then driving on the right, becomes a harder adjustment coming back. So last time we drove on the left, I drove all around Ireland, the whole country on the left. And then I almost killed myself coming back to the US, you know. Anyway. Okay, so then we look more about lock and the list of lock, and they kind of drilled that into us. And then I don't know if you guys want to stop me, go ahead and stop me.
So I'm going to pull you down here. I don't remember if we really got into it at this point. It's been a number of days since I actually did this course, but I will say that in real life, I get tripped up on lock loc. I don't know how you pronounce it. I get tripped up all the time, and so so I don't know if that's just worth mentioning here. I mean, for the more experienced people, did you have learning curve issues with getting loc and iloc right?
Well, the thing that kind of threw me while I was learning this is that the integer is not done in single quotes, but the location name is. And I realized that's kind of a fundamental thing, but switching back and forth, I was like, oh shit, I forgot it. I mean, it was only like a second where I'm like, oh, I forgot. But
yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty normal. It is a little bit of a confusing syntax. It's very terse. So I imagine if you're doing it, they're probably optimizing for the people that do it all the time.
Yeah.
Make it nice and easy for them.
Yeah.
They're not optimizing for the beginner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always, if I work with pandas, it's not my day-to-day. I always have to kind of gently warm up with it, and I'm like, okay, cool, now I've got it, because I do the same things over and over once I start, but the way you reference things is just a little different than dictionaries. The way you filter, it's just, everything's just a little different than what I normally use. So it takes a little adjustment, but I don't use iloc, so that helps, I think, is you kind of using one thing over and over again
I'm
on
kind of
those
surprised.
projects.
Something went wrong because I remember doing these, so I don't know why like this didn't save for me. But
yeah. By the way, I will mention, you talked about like the quotes and the not quotes.
yes.
So pandas doesn't require that your column names be strings. And so I was actually working with some data where the column names were actual ints, not strings. And so it was 1, 2, 3, 4, not quote 1, 2, 3, 4. And then what made it even worse is at some point I like saved the data to a CSV, and when I loaded it back in, it loaded as quote 1, 2, 3, 4. It assumed it was a string, or something, or the reverse. I don't remember. But so I like had to change my code to accept the fact that they were ints, not strings. And then at some point when I saved it to CSV and reloaded it, it broke my code all over again because now they were in the other data type. So like when you think of, like I do SQL, like you think of a column name, it's effectively a string. Just beware that in pandas, that it I don't know. I think you can do floats. I'm not sure, but basically it doesn't require that they be strings.
It's Python. You can probably do floats.
Yeah. So just beware.
Cool. Thanks, Ed. So I don't know if you noticed, but this wasn't filled out, but I did this. I don't know. DataCamp lost my work or something. So you like this thing where you can just like compare the NumPy array. We talked about this already, right? And then we did some Boolean. See, they're messing with me because I had all this done. But the Boolean against, I think there's nothing big there. And then
Yeah. Python does short circuit. He didn't call it out or anything, I don't think, but you can rely on it to short circuit, which I think is one of the weirdest things about Python. So it's great that it can short circuit, and that makes total sense. However, Python has a very readable ternary or tertiary operator, right? You know, the one in C-based languages, that's like if some condition question mark A colon B, right? Python, it looks like A if condition else B, right? And that also short circuits. So the A, even though it's on the left, short circuits if the middle is false, right? Which makes it super confusing, right? It's like nice that it's very readable, but it makes it really confusing if you bring short circuiting into it. I don't know. I'm having a hard time describing what I'm saying.
It doesn't follow left to right order on short circuiting.
Yeah. So like write this real quick. Let me see if I see something in here that I can use. Yeah. So like, these are all NP arrays, but let's just say, go down below this and just say x equal 1. And then next line, say, quote, hello, whatever. And then move over, nope, next, sorry, after that, yeah. If x greater than 1, else,
Else.
else, yeah, and then space, hi, quote hi.
Yep.
Yeah. So like there, if hello were a function call and hi were a function call, right? So that it reads like hello gets executed and then we do the if statement. But actually hello will never get called if, in this case, because x is 1 and it needs to be greater than 1, right? So it does short circuit even though hello is on the left. You see what I'm saying? It makes it weird.
That's crazy.
I try to avoid writing code with side effects, so then the short circuiting doesn't matter, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, if it's, yeah, like it's normally if it's like a function call, do this thing or this thing, right? And I want to assign the variable, right? So like get me the weight or get me the BMI. And it depends on whether it's this or that I want to get either the weight or the BMI, right? Anyway, that was a super contrived example, but I have used it before and it just makes it weird.
Another fun thing is that in most situations, at least, you could say like x equals y or none or something like that. No, you wouldn't do that, but x equals y or high. And so if y was none, it would go with that other value you're providing. It's kind of like a built-in coalesce, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, exactly. JavaScript has the same thing.
So we're kind of running out of time. Did you guys, if I look at this agenda, it's all control of flow and Boolean logic and loops. I was going to kind of go fast here unless you guys had something you really wanted to talk about.
No, I mean, Boolean logic and loops. Yeah, nothing crazy there.
The only thing I would say about something that I don't think we covered here is what was the looping structure, the enumerate? I did like that a lot. So I don't know how far that is down here, but yeah, this enumerate, like I thought that was just kind of cool. Like, oh, so they have my code here, right? So like, I'll give you the index and I'll give you the row if you want that.
And the same thing with dictionaries. You can use .items to get the key and the value together as you're looping through it.
Yes, I like that also. It was very linky to me.
Yep, there it is right there. Yep.
Yep, I like that a lot. Yep.
But then in pandas, you have to do iter row in order to get the row instead of it defaulting to the row, which is very strange.
Yeah, and they show that here too,
Yeah.
iter row. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
but I
that
like
seems
that label in a row.
To be fair though, like in pandas, there's so many ways to work with columns and work with the data frame that I don't find myself looping it a lot as far as I can recall, but it is kind of funny.
And I guess the other thing I would say, or what I would want to talk about it, so that I liked enumerate and I liked add a row. And then I also liked the adding column portion. I don't know that I can get there, where it's just the dot apply. I don't know if that, yeah, here. Like that's very R-like, isn't it, Ted? R does something similar where you just say, hey, just do this for everything, row by row.
I mean, you can do it. It's, yeah, this is a little different though.
So I know I'm skipping around, but what dot apply does for anybody following along is this says you're going to add a new column. You're going to apply this method to every row. And what I didn't like about this example is I don't like any code that relies on case. Like, why do that to yourself? And so the country and country is confusing, but this is an existing column that they are saying apply to every value in that column, record by record, and apply this method to it, and then bolt it on as a new column called country that you can see. So you can see United States becomes upper United States. And this is very linky to me, Scott, where you're just like, hey, it's like a callback, or, you know, hey, this is the method pointer that you're going to be hitting, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, they are
Sort of.
actually passing a function. They're naming
Yep.
a function and passing it. They're not calling a function there.
Yeah, they're naming.
So function is a first
Right.
class object for people who know what that means. And you are passing that first class object to apply. And apply says, I know what to do with functions. You can hand me help, you can hand me print, you can hand me any function, and I will know what to do with it. And you can use apply for anything. You don't have to assign it to a new column. You can just do a bunch of arithmetic, concatenation, whatever the heck you want.
Yep.
Anyway, I think it makes for a very readable and terse code at the same time, as long as it's used appropriately, I guess. I'd hate to see a bunch of applies bolted onto each other, but yeah, I liked it. And that's kind of all I had about this lesson. Did anybody have anything else they wanted to talk about before we move on to the notebook?
Well, so the new column thing, just also, like, you can just say my data frame square bracket new column equals, and you can put
5,
anything there.
some literal or something.
Yes, and it'll add a new column. And for the longest time, I didn't know you could do that in R or Python. I was looking for, like, how do I, like, create a list and then append it, and I was like, oh, it's actually way simpler than that.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so then, so I always lose my place. So I have to come back over to my recommendations, and I think I don't know if they saved my notebook or not when oh, did anybody have a hard time clicking into this thing? When I was on the track to do this, I couldn't click into this. Maybe it's my browser, but I had to actually go to search and then, oh, hang on. I had to go to search and then click the Python one and then go in to the project. And then I'm not sure if it saves my work or not. I actually have the notebook saved off, but
I think maybe you just hit a glitch. For me, it was just like all the other ones. You just click on it.
oh, weird. No, it doesn't let me do that. So there's Katy Perry. That's a famous, like, left shark meme, right? And no, I think they saved my work. That's cool,
Yeah.
huh?
Yep.
So I did enjoy this. And at first they didn't have that many guardrails, but then they started adding guardrails as the lesson went on.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, don't add a guardrail, remove it, you know? And it got a
Yeah.
little repetitive toward the end.
Yeah. I agree.
But I thought this was pretty neat. I don't think I learned anything here necessarily, but it did make me put the stuff from PyPlot and from Pandas together. And I liked that. And oh, I also learned that when they say put your code there, you need to remove this or they ding you. You need to remove the comment for where you put your code or it fails when you run the whole project.
I didn't know that. I mean, I must have done it because I don't think I got dinged, but that's a good tip. Thanks.
The other thing is they say in the document that you don't need to put display there, but I did it anyway, just because I don't know why, but I did it anyway. And they dinged me for leaving display in. So I had to remove it and then I could go. Yeah, you don't need to use display here, but I was like, yeah, I'll leave it in. They didn't like that. And then, I don't know, I enjoyed this part actually. And I liked the data set that they made you use, which is about halftime shows at the Super Bowl and the point differential. Like I liked it.
Yeah, I agree with you though that it started off like almost like a real project would, where you have very few guardrails, and then toward the end it was like, yeah, fill in the blank, you know, add a print statement here or whatever. It got less fun as it went on, which was kind of disappointing.
Yeah.
I agree. I liked the data set and it was interesting.
Yeah. So Maya said you can construct pandas data frame columns from dictionaries easily. Yep, that's true. I should have paid attention to the chat. Okay, what do you guys think? Is that a good first session?
Good enough for me. So we decided that next time we're going to do a data manipulation and the toolbox one. Is that what we're doing?
Yes, and I'll update the meeting agenda and tell people that, and then.
But same project.
Yes, same project, yes.
Okay.
And then I'll put my notes up on the meeting chat if anybody wants the URLs or whatever. All right. Anybody have anything to say? Thanks for coming, guys. I appreciate it. Hopefully we'll see you guys next time. This was fun. I'm glad we had this quorum here.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Good seeing everyone.
Yeah,
All
thanks
right.
for setting this up.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. All right. See you next time, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.